Ladies and gentlemen, our next panel discussion is on the role of digitization in credit decisioning in the new world. Let me introduce you to the moderator, Mr. Ramraj Pai, Chief Executive Officer, Impact Investors Council. And now, to our lineup of panelists, we have Ms. Meghna Suryakumar, Founder and CEO, CreditWatch Information Analytics. Next, we have Mr. Mayuresh Sanjagiri, Head Risk and Product, Bajaj Finserv Markets. Next up is Mr. Deepak Sharma, President and Chief Digital Officer, Kotak Mahindra Bank. Our final panelist for the session is Mr. Sanjay Jain, Partner, Bharat Innovation. Welcome, everyone. Without further ado, let's get started with the session. Over to you, Mr. Ramraj.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction. And welcome to everyone on this very interesting and very timely panel on the role of digitization in credit decisioning. I think which is a very, very important topic. I think very close to the hearts of a lot of people. I think we've all seen the impact that digitization has had, whether it is through the India Stack, API aggregations, and some of the other innovations which have really substantively helped credit decisioning in the country. I think today we are going to really look at the next phase or look at some of the new areas where possibly digitization is going to give us the second big kind of jump in terms of the quality as well as the quantity of credit decisioning that is going to be taken. I think we have a fantastic panel. So without wasting too much time, I'm going to kind of quickly jump into the discussions. I broadly want to cover 4 or 5 key things. I think the first one is broadly the role of regulation and really talk a bit about that. I think the second is really to look at how digitization is really adding value, not just in onboarding and in application scorecard, but across the value chain. How is digitization? I think the third part is really looking at what does this mean from an investment and investable opportunity perspective. What role can fintechs play and what can be a visualization in terms of what's going to happen in this space. I think, we try and kind of end up by talking a bit about what are the implications of the present situation on COVID and the pandemic. Is this going to really lead to a situation where we're going to take a bit of a comma or a bit of a step back and kind of relook at, at maybe going back slightly to a physical model, given that, the country and all the people are going through some challenging situations. So can digitization cross that hump, or are we going to have a bit of a slowdown in terms of the momentum? I think that those are the 3 or 4 broad things. So let me quickly kind of jump in and start talking a bit about regulation. And I'd like to keep this very informal without, pointing questions to specific people. But maybe just for the sake of convenience, I may, kind of indicate, a couple of people to talk about it. So I thought we can just talk a bit about the whole regulatory space and the directionality of regulation, whether we look at the whole NBFC account aggregators or we look at the whole open credit platform and loan service providers or the regulatory sandbox. So maybe I'd start by requesting Deepak, who's obviously in the thick of things here as CDO of Kotak, President and CDO of Kotak Bank. How do you see this whole space? We all know that NBFC account aggregators is great, but do we believe that this is going to get a regulatory blessing? Very much like what maybe the credit bureau space got at some point in time. And we all know that it is that regulatory push which really moved substantial volumes of data into the credit bureau system. So maybe I'd request Deepak to start, and then I think Sanjay, Meghna, you guys can kind of pitch in. So over to you, Deepak.
Yeah, thanks, Ramraj. And I think it's great to be here on this panel. As you, I think, outlined some of the things which is happening and shaping up from a regulatory standpoint, and which I think just like we saw earlier disrupting and creating new opportunities in payments. In my view, that's a similar opportunity we are on the cusp of seeing in the lending space. Account aggregator, of course, is one such area, because we all realize now that India is one of those countries which has become data rich before people have become economically rich. And I think the model of financial inclusion and access to credit at the back of data, that's the power I think that account aggregator creates. Because I think while this debate is settled, who owns the data and who's the custodian of data, I don't think I would like to get into that anymore. But I think what it's creating is the framework for the privacy and the consent-based architecture, not just for financial data, which we are starting with, but over a period of time, probably all kind of data that a customer generates and leaves a data footprint across different entities, and how this data as an asset can be used to find access to credit or other financial services. I think the other part is similarly the regulatory sandbox, which again, in my mind, is equally path breaking. Because today, the innovation in India follows regulation, especially wherever you have a regulatory oversight or the sector, especially the lending or probably underwriting, it has to go through. It's also creating an opportunity for limited experiment to test and try new business models with a regulatory oversight, with consumer protection in mind. And I think these are the right steps, along with obviously the public credit registry and the loan service providers, what we are seeing. So if you look at this whole framework, be it account aggregator or LSP or regulatory sandbox or PCR, I think all of these, in my mind, put together will drive a new models, bring in new players, and provide a faster and better access to credit, even for a small credit, shorter tenure, or small amounts. And I think all of this will build in a new source of trust that today somehow is missing in the ecosystem. When a small business has to go and ask for, say, credit against invoice, or probably look at a short-term access to credit at the retailer end or the last mile credit. And I think when the power is towards consumer empowerment, it creates an ecosystem for all players to come in and find a trusted model. There is no reason why something like this will not be successful.
Okay. Thanks, Deepak, for that. And, I think we are at a very interesting point in time. I mean, we have been part of this movement for a long time. The account aggregator framework has been in the work for a few years. And I'm very enthused to see that it's following the path of UPI, in the sense that we have a lot of industry players who have adopted it. We've got the regulatory oversight that makes sure that the system is safe, and that we are going to be able to empower people with the use of their data. And while I think UPI took like about a year to start taking off, I think even 1 year later, we couldn't have predicted where we would be. I was just looking at the stats, and I think last year we crossed the number of ATM cash out transactions. I mean, that's just nobody thought we would have digital payment transactions beating ATM transactions. And I think we are on the same path with account aggregator, and perhaps even maybe quicker than that, because the industry is very ready for it. And I do want to point out that one of the first use cases for account aggregator kind of data is going to be credit. And in that front, I mean, I think Nandan spoke about it earlier today. And, we've been talking about this model for a loan service provider, which is where you have an entity which is closely related to the customer, who ensures a better connect with the lending ecosystem, and thus making sure that merchants who are already part of such formal arrangements as aggregators can also get access to loans. And this will hopefully get formalized in the form of a set of APIs which can be widely available, so that many such LSPs can come into being, and thus eventually getting us to this holy grail of where we are able to make sure that this digitization leads to credit decisioning for those folks who have so far not been able to benefit from the volume of lending that's going on. And that's primarily our smaller end of the MSME space. And, I'm really, really hopeful that this will take off and, allow us to build a better society.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you, Sanjay. I think Meghna, I just wanted to come to you on the same question. I think yours is a very unique organization. I think you kind of mind and bring together a lot of data, and then you have the analytics layer on top. And now you guys are kind of coming in more into the process side. So really looking across the value chain. How do you see this whole regulatory kind of environment and Are there spaces where you felt or you feel that possibly the regulator could think about to really accelerate this process much more substantially, just in the same space that we've been talking about?
Sure. So, when started CreditWatch 3 years ago, 85% of the loans out there were only with real estate as an asset, right? And even that, most of the loans outstanding were with very large entities. So when we looked at the RBI data 3 years ago, only 15% of the total, loans outstanding were, for small businesses,
Right.
and out of that, 99% was against a real estate mortgage.
Right.
So that's how this situation was when CreditWatch started in 2016.
Right.
And what we've seen that happen over the past 3 years is the ecosystems really opened up. First with the UPI and then the account aggregator, and now we have new models like the LSP coming in, where infrastructure is being created in the industry to convert data as an asset class against which you can get a loan. Companies like Facebook and Google have made billions of dollars at the expense of giving you free email or a free, social media network, and they have monetized your data. So today is an opportunity for a small business to be able to get a loan, because it's transparent and it shares data and is a participant in the ecosystem, instead of being, having to pledge real property, right? So from that perspective, we feel like this is a very, it's a turning point in terms of where we are in the lending ecosystem today. But there's some more work that needs to be done, right? Between the AA to the actual financial institution, many other business models will need to kind of evolve to completely, complete the puzzle. One area where not a lot of work has been done is in the area of credit rating and credit scoring. Even if you look at all the sandboxes that are out today, they leave out solving this particular problem. Where we don't have a challenger bureau or we don't have a challenger rating agency that is not, if you have today you have to be a rating agency, you have to follow 20,000 regulations and have a huge capital or a bureau also. So I think that if we look at solving for the problem where there's a score that can be used to actually analyze the SME, and that can become a standard where across the industry, just like you have a CIBIL score for individuals, if we have alternative way now using all of these data sets for small businesses and their challenge kind of new data analytics entities, right, that also become participants, I feel like that will complete the puzzle.
Got it. No, I do agree that I do feel that and I would wish and hope, obviously being from the credit ratings industry and having that background, that the system, the infrastructure, I wish would invest a lot more in evaluations and much more fine and granular evaluations of not just medium enterprises, small enterprises, micro enterprises, and so on and so forth. I'm just going to kind of quickly move on, Meghna, and I'm going to talk next about this role of digitization, which is really, the normal feeling is that this is all for giving a loan. But I think, what we are seeing across the board is people are not just using this for just giving a loan upfront in an onboarding. It's also happening from the perspective of credit monitoring, credit administration, early warning signals, cross-sell, which is really not a part of credit, but there's huge amounts of data in terms of the supply chain analytics. There's so many spaces which is going far beyond onboarding, as the pure play use of all of this. So maybe I think, and Mayuresh, Bajaj has been, a pioneer in many ways in terms of the way you used digitization, some of the, new and innovative things you guys have done in this space. Particularly on the consumer loan side, but though we are largely talking about SMEs now, why don't you share a little bit about, how you sort of look at, this whole process of, credit decisioning in digitization, and maybe once you finish, we can go to Deepak. Over to you, Mayuresh.
Yeah. Hi, Ramraj, and good evening to everyone on the call. So, I think the advent of digitization in India actually started around 15 years ago with largely with the credit bureaus coming into shape. And so the actual problem that probably the first set of digitization tried to solve was more around credit monitoring and, the delinquencies rather than trying to actually address, the onboarding process as such. I think banks overall have been pushed to, digitization through, pressures of risk monitoring, as well as, the increasing credit costs that were involved in onboarding.
Yeah.
With this, and then with the advent of, the India stack and APIization, what it actually helped, completely transform the onboarding process, where information could be validated on the fly. You had a lot of fraud elements weeded out by information getting validated real time. This helped people build real time credit decisioning engines.
Right.
The ecosystem of KYC, e-mandate, etc. Actually eased the entire onboarding process and made it satisfactory for the customer, as well as bringing a lot of cost benefits to the lenders. This sort of gradually started having a downstream impact on your subsequent credit and risk related activities like early warning signals and credit monitoring. With this entire process of digitization, data started getting accumulated in a much more structured manner than how it used to happen earlier. And then again, a lot of new technologies coming where lenders started capturing data of all interactions with customers, using technologies like converting speech to text, and actually capturing the minutest of customer interactions in a structured manner, and then trying to link these new set of data points to customer behavior and trying to help in terms of monitoring and refining their risk algorithms. So I think the entire process of digitization has actually been beneficial to both customers by helping them getting seamless experiences, getting much quicker decisions, and has also helped lenders a long way by reducing costs and improving managing their delinquencies.
That's great.
So I think it's great space, great time to be in with digitization at the forefront.
It's very good to hear, Mayuresh, because normally the regular thinking will be that a bank has access to transaction data, because obviously they're running cash credit accounts, OD accounts. So there's a lot of transaction data which you can use for predictive purposes. Whereas what you're telling me is even as an NBFC structure, you kind of innovated and are using a very different bunch of data points, which wouldn't traditionally be the kind of things that one may be thinking about, which is really looking at the regular credits and debits and the regular things that one is kind of used to. But I think you guys are taking it. Maybe Deepak, from your side, I know for a fact that Kotak, obviously really high quality book, and I've had extensive interactions with many people in your team on the early warning product and all kinds of areas on predictive analytics. What are some of your thoughts on how digitization is changing the entire credit monitoring and credit sort of tracking kind of space far beyond onboarding?
Yes, I think Ramraj, one of the things that we definitely are seeing a shift is a lot of touch and feel based credit.
Yeah,
increasingly is moving towards a partial touch and a lot of technology,
right,
machine learning, training the models, trying to see what you were doing through physical documents and sifting through everything. If you take the same model in, how does that work?
Right.
So some amount of as it is process obviously got digitized first. However, that had very limited impact because what we started to see is a lot of new data sources which started to come, which are authenticated data. See, one of the biggest issue in any credit decision model is the trust. Do you trust the data that comes to you? And that's why you look at verifying a lot of things. There are in-person verification, there are field verification. Look at documents, trusted source of documents, credibility of promoters, whether there are any legal cases against them. And then you go the whole 9 yards trying to ensure, especially when you are looking at the MSME, and I'm not talking too much on the retail individual credit here, because those issues are relatively, I would say, much easy to solve through digitization.
Correct.
Since we are focusing on MSME, I think that's where it had a lot of touch and feel and a much longer process of evaluation to underwriting to finally dispersal.
Got it.
What we have started to see now is obviously there's a lot of data that is available at source. And when you look at data at source, for example, the way you can pull today a GST data, or we can do a triangulation of the GST data with a bank statement, and the income tax return and the company's balance sheet, pulling out data from ROC. So all of a sudden, the comfort on bringing in data from source does not need any additional layer of verification, and that helps build a model which is a far more trusted digital model to bring in a larger part of decision. The second thing that we are also seeing is there are still certain documents which are paper. Not every document at source is digital. I think with some of the better OCR and the cognitive OCR kind of technologies, we are able to see a better extraction of physical data or PDF document into what is required in the decision model. Thereby, it helps a faster interaction. Now, the third big shift we have seen is now the more use of video for in-person discussion where required. So I'm not going to say that there'll be on-the-tap credit available for every single customer segment in MSME. Because depending on, again, the ticket size, whether it's a working capital loan or a business loan or a loan against property or it's a short-term loan, there will be a different credit assessment process. However, now the whole need of going and meeting customer on field or probably finding more information about the line of business, the inventory, the way the business is managed. I think a lot of this information again is available through various technology solution providers who have ability to do a forensics, to probably the background verification checks, to get a lot of this data real time, or maybe even with some lag, but purely digital. And the last is, as I mentioned, the whole in-person interaction prior to a loan dispersal has started to move on video. And I think as we start seeing this whole ecosystem that is emerging, it's providing far greater confidence to the team that is managing credit underwriting, origination, or those who are monitoring this credit. Because if there is a better understanding of the end use of credit, how it's getting used, or probably are there any early warning signal, it also gives a lot more confidence, and that feedback goes back into underwriting of the new credit. Or re-looking at extension of limits on existing cases, or probably looking at a more proactive approach on credit rather than it's always the customer who comes and asks for credit. I think all these shift, while I'm not saying that we have reached the desired state, but I think just like you asked the question of digitization leading to how credit is changing, probably all these put together today at least is given 50% at least higher confidence on the technology, while still remaining 50 continues to be human. Question is, how do we move the remaining 50? That probably will be a process over a period of time. I think we have reached, and especially during COVID time, moment like, for example, we had an option to give MSMEs a higher limit on working capital. It was much easier for us to offer them top up, use stuff like e-sign and agreement, and this could get done really quickly. So I think some of that capability that was built pre-COVID helped us provide access to credit to customers during COVID.
Great. That's great to hear. I'll just take this question to Meghna because as an organization, I think CreditWatch really lies at the, in a way, bang in the middle of this sort of flow of data. In terms of some of the products and services you offer, definitely for credit monitoring, and I'm sure now you have expanded that suite of products. So, do you want to kind of talk about your journey and how has it kind of been in terms of when you started and to where you are today in terms of both the quality, the quantity of data, as well as the ease with which you're able to integrate new sources of public data?
Sure. So when we started in 2016, we were the first company in India to digitize the MCA. which is a data on private companies. And we started off by simply giving APIs to lenders like Capital Float to help them digitize, the entire loan process for private companies. And that started with one source in 2016. And and today we have about 2,500 sources. So CreditWatch is, and this is just in the public domain. We've gone about to digitize a lot of alternative sources of data. For example, the Provident Fund. Companies file, whether they're proprietorships, partnerships, or they're public companies. They file, if they have more than 20 employees, they would file returns every month. And this data source has been public for over 20 years now. We were the first company to kind of use this as a parameter for early warning signals, and also to help some of our customers underwrite alternative businesses for loans. Right? And then if we look at news source, right? If you look at slightly larger SMEs or you look at larger public companies, there would be some amount of digital footprints they would have in the media, especially in local media in whichever cities that they operate in. So we were the first company in India in 2016 to get a license from Press Trust of India. And we get live feeds of every English-speaking news article in India, just like any news agency. And we've created a lot of sentiment analysis and NLP, and we're able to also identify if there's adverse information about a company or even the promoters. Even legal cases per se, we have like 800 microsites of cases. And a lot of that information is in PDFs in the form of cost lists. So we're again the first company in India to digitize the legal cases database, where over 100 million legal cases, and being added every day, and totally 100 million in my database as of now. And we're now analyzing data to see we can actually even predict the outcome of the cases. So we're working on stuff like that. And what happened is when we bunched together 2,500 sources of data, we'd be like, how is a customer or a bank going to make sense of all of this? So this is when we built our, predictive models, like our EWS model. With all of this data, just from the external data, I can predict 12 months from now whether a company could likely be in financial. Now, with all of the alternative data that we're looking at, and also with newer data sources like GST, bank statements, utility, we're looking at a new way of scoring a small business, because the way the traditional rating agencies have been doing it by giving a BBB+ or a BBB- is even for the best in class SME is not the right way to judge them, right? So from that perspective, the new data sources have kind of really opened up a new way of understanding these businesses. And we feel that, now that the new definition of SME is up to 250 crores, we'll see a lot of new alternative, data companies like us, providing these insights to our customers to serve new to credit customers or offer different kind of financial products and services to them, probably even at much more reduced interest rates than before.
Great. So Meghna, just give me a sense. I'm just curious. What would be the top 5 or 6 data sources that you wish were part of your utility today, which would add disproportionate value? Any sort of
PCR would be. If you have access to PCR, it would add disproportionate value. And if you could directly, entities like us, if you could plug either as an LSP or as a fintech into the credit registries and credit bureaus, that would also add disproportionate value. And right now, the account aggregator framework is directly information given by an individual from another financial institution to another financial institution, right? We cannot directly request for this information unless the recipient of the information is a regulated entity. So maybe giving us access into those frameworks would really disrupt the way we'd be able to create analysis for our customers.
Got it. Which brings me, Sanjay, to you. I think you kind of looked at these deep tech kind of solutions which bring about very transformative financial inclusion in a way, right? And what you're trying to do here really is service those customers who are, I think, as Deepak very eloquently put it, before becoming economically rich, we have become data rich. So all of these customers, I would believe most of them are of reasonable quality. I mean, may not be really right up there, like a complete top-notch guys, but of decent quality. What kind of how do you visualize this kind of whole sort of scenario going forward? And you've been part of the journey of things like the India Stack. I mean, I'm sure 10-15 years back, if someone said, in India we would have something like an Aadhaar, we would have a KYC, and we would have a UPI which is working the way you are telling us today. digital payments. I think people would have just said that, this is all just a pipe dream. Whereas all of that has come through today. So how would you really look at, investments in this space, as well as how would you visualize things looking like, say, 5 years down the road?
So let me sort of talk about from the investment perspective. We are very firm believers that what we are seeing in India today, the wave of digitization is only going to grow.
Okay.
That's going to lead to a lot more formalization. And as a part of this formalization, we will see better credit decisioning. We've invested in a company in the space called Credit Vidya, which is more not really targeted towards MSMEs, but on the personal loan side. And we are able to see them expand access to credit to a lot of folks who would otherwise not get it. In addition to that, we think that there is, while we are looking at it all from the supply side, from the demand side as well, I think if you see what open banking API access does, is it actually tries to bring the whole financial piece closer to the customer. So, a customer wants to do business. The fact that he needs a loan is either to make sure that he's covering working capital sort of shortfall, or he's looking for growth and he needs a capital for growth. And, a lot of time gets spent on managing the process of getting credit. And if it were better built into their workflows and seamless thing, then I think we would see a very different model where businesses can go around doing their business while their financial needs are taken care of through systems which are well integrated into them. So that is another trend we see, is that towards open banking, both an infrastructure play as well as hopefully, we're not yet seeing those plays, but coming into the user's life so that we can manage these journeys better. And so we remain very bullish. So we've invested in Setu, which is an infrastructure play, and we will continue to look for more opportunities which will either increase the level of digitization, bring in more infrastructure, or make a better, give a better experience to the end user. I think those are spaces we will continue to look at.
Which is basically, you would say, like a Phone Pay or a Google Pay equivalent for the credit infrastructure in a way, which will be more of a consumer facing thing. Okay. Now, I think we are running a bit short of time. We have 10 minutes left. I just want to get to a couple of areas I wanted to speak to Mayuresh about particularly. I think Mayuresh, what will be very interesting is, all of this sounds great and, it's a lovely for a discussion. But the reality is, on the ground today, we have a situation where, the reality is that economic activity has materially come down. I think, there's number of people who've fallen back into poverty is a real number. I mean, these are not, these are real things which are happening out there, while we are discussing all this. I just wanted to get a sense from you, Mayuresh, in terms of, this whole COVID and the pandemic situation. Do you kind of see overall credit processes sort of, if I may say, move sideways for a while, go back to more of the traditional ways, primarily because, really, a lot of the data we have today is of the data of the past. And we know today that the COVID has created a discontinuity. And, this is not a interim 1 month discontinuity. This could severely impact a lot of the customers who are not very economically well off. So, they are going to have a shock for a while. So how do you really see this whole digitization and credit decisioning sort of move sideways? Do you see that that's happening, or you sort of feel that, we kind of this is just a blip and we can kind of move on from there?
Yeah. So, Ramraj, I kind of have a, opposite sort of take on this when it comes to digitization and, the current scenario that we are all going through. I feel the need of digitization is even more, required today versus probably 5 or 6 months back. And, one of the reasons I say this is, what we need to differentiate is, the entire digitization piece and the risk modeling piece. These, in a way, are, two separate components. What has happened is, the pandemic has sort of created a loss of confidence in the risk models that, most of the lenders are currently using. Because a lot of it is based on, past data, past trend. And such a situation has never played out in the past. So it's more a question of confidence whether these models would hold in the current situation. what the need of the hour today actually is that everyone wants is actually recency of information, right? What exactly is happening with the customer right now, and that only digitization can solve for. Right. So risk models is on one side, right? How you can get real-time data on the customer as to what his situation is right now, and then how do you process it and take, on lending is then an outcome of that. So I think in today's time it is even more digitization is key of how we can get ready access on real-time data on individuals to help us take good credit decisions.
Got it. No, I think that's a great point. Deepak, any thoughts from you on this? I know models is really not something that you will be working with on a day-to-day basis, but any broad thoughts? Because I think what Mayuresh is saying is what's most important is how is the customer in the last 2 months? Is he spending? Is he not spending? What is he doing? Is your infrastructure able to give you those kind of inputs, or it's something that we will need to build?
I think I agree with what Mayuresh said, because see, for any model that you build, finally the model has to be stress tested.
Got it.
And when the going is good, there is no way you can do a stress test.
Yeah.
Because you have predictable cycles, you build the model around cycles that you have seen, and that's why no offense to someone who's new into lending, but I heard and I saw a lot of bravado about different customer segments that people were just willing to go and write check. They're not. But I think what happens is over a period of time when you see probably a long credit cycle, so boom and bust, and you know how certain segments, they never recover. And I think this is again a scenario where it's not that all sectors where we would have had exposure would bounce back at the same time. Some will obviously recover faster than others. Some may probably never recover to its full extent. And I think these are all the real challenges of any risk-based model, right? So while you can have a proprietary model, and I think we can all pride ourselves with how we managed it, but I think the truth is when moratorium was announced, you needed to really understand the data as to customers who had intent to pay but no means to pay versus those who had means to pay but no intent to pay, right? So how do you start looking at models like these to fine tune and say who are the customers where you need to really look at extending credit, withdrawing credit, restraining it. And I think all of this has to come through various data, machine learning algos, access to real-time info. So there's no way I think one can even think of staying where one is. One has to move forward. There is a lot more, and I think in my mind, businesses built and fine-tuned at this time will have a great learning and insight.
Absolutely.
Different customer and industry segments and the data points to have a far robust credit model going forward.
Absolutely. I can't agree more with you, Deepak. I think all the people, I mean, and because maybe I have been in the risk space myself, I think you are really seeing the quality of the work you've done. And, you know, are the people who you think are high quality or high rated, are they indeed high quality or high rated under such an extreme stress? And if they are not, how are people recovering from the stress? Who are the people recovering the first? Who are the people who are going to recover later? What are some of those nuances, I think, are going to be very invaluable, not just from a credit perspective, econometrically, in variety of ways. I think, this is going to be fascinating data and information. We don't need to do any more stress testing because the universe itself is stress testing us today. So I don't think we need to further add any further stress over and above a situation where the economy goes maybe shut for 2 months and then 50% open for the next 2 months. So I think that's but I also feel, as you rightly said, this is an opportunity, as Mayuresh pointed out, a great opportunity to create infrastructure to pick up even more information, so that even when you look at people who are recovering, how they are going to perform is something that becomes very valuable for us to track. So I'm going to kind of get on to the question and answer session now. We're getting lots of interesting questions, and I'm going to kind of throw the questions open. I mean, questions are there for a variety of people. I think one of the very interesting questions which I thought I wanted to ask, but obviously there was no time. What do you think could be the barriers that could cause banks to delay or sidetrack digitization efforts in the new world? And I think this is something which is very important. So, for example, if I look at all the large incumbent FIPs, if I may use that word, the information scarcity is for the banks and for the financial service entities which don't have large established base of customers. But for the banks which have very significant, large, dominant market share, relatively speaking, something like an AA, the NBFC AA system is actually stuff where a lot of their information is sort of, in a way, in some part moving to others. So how do we see this whole situation where, do you see a situation where maybe banks will voluntarily come in and, the FIPs will come in to do this sort of, new wave of digitization? Or are we going to really look at regulation coming in and saying this is something that has to be done? Maybe Deepak, I'll go with you, and then maybe I can go to Mayuresh and Sanjay and others.
No, so I think I'll continue with where I left. I'm saying it's not optional any which way.
Yeah.
Do you have a choice? Answer is no.
Right.
Just don't have a choice. I mean, this is table stakes. If institutions have to manage their risk capital better, if they have to manage overall, the growth of franchisee, the cost of acquisition, the cost of service, the whole business model. And this is one area where, as we all famously say, that the capital that institution is putting is just 10%, 90% is all the risk. You only make money when you get your last installment or the last 2 installments from customer.
Right.
So I think one is taking disproportionate risk for the return that one gets, and especially if you make poor credit decision. It's going to haunt. Organizations have not lost world over by poor customer service, unfortunately, in financial service.
Right.
Organizations, the financial institutions have just gone belly up because they couldn't manage their risk better. Largely around the credit. So I don't think anyone, irrespective of where financial institutions are in their journey, they are all going to imbibe, they are going to adopt this like never before, probably with a lot more urgency and sense of purpose than what we probably saw earlier.
Sure. Mayuresh, your thoughts on this? My memories are just jogged by the way the credit bureau structure came up, because finally, I think the regulator had to come down, and if I'm not wrong, and that's just my memory serves me right, they had to sort of tell the banking system that you have to be able to give this data. So I'm just wondering whether we are going to have a more enlightened financial services system at that point, or are we going to kind of go through a few more torturous years of trying to get onto the to the bandwagon, as it were? Maybe Mayuresh, I'll pass that question to you.
Yeah. So as I mentioned in my last comment, I think the need to sort of change and embrace digitization has become more prominent in these times. Because that's the only way one can try and stay relevant in today's times. And one of the biggest risks, as Deepak mentioned, that this situation has put us in for all lenders and banks, how your credit cost or loan losses are actually going to play out, and how you manage customers and work with them to tide over it will require them to open up and have access and give access to data.
Great, Mayuresh, thank you. We are running quite late. It looks like we've been going ahead of time is what I'm given to understand. So before I allow the moderator to comment, I just wanted to thank everyone. I think this was a fantastic discussion, some great points. From what you told me, I think clearly more data and a data-rich society which enables a far greater inclusion is the way of the future. Yes, there could be some short-term interim challenges, but I do believe that this is the way to go. It's clearly the mandate, and this is the view that came in from the audience. Thank you all, and over to you, moderator.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all of you panelists, for making time and coming to this session. I'd also like to thank our valued partners, CrediWatch, eBiotech, UKFCO, SBI Mutual Fund, Bank of India, and iDesign. We'll be taking a short break and we'll be back later. Thank you, everyone.